All right, hello, 7th grade. My name is Mr. Rogers.
And I'm Mrs. Froman.
And you're watching the video notes for, I think it's section 4-2. So this is on human genetic disorders. This is more when things or changes happen to the DNA. So that's caused those mutations we talked about in the last chapter. And a genetic disorder is an abnormal condition a person inherits through their genes caused by mutations in the DNA. And sometimes these mutations are carried from generation to generation, depending where it is in the DNA. We're looking at a few specific types. There's a lot more out there than what we're going to talk about today, just a few select ones we're going to look at today. But remember, the idea of a mutation is where we have that sequence of DNA, the A's and T's, C's and G's lining up. And then the opposite side, they'd pair up, and if something gets stopped or changed, replaced with one, I think it's being replacement. Mm-hmm. So the DNA is being replaced. So like changing letters in a book, if I just started changing letters.
Changes the meaning of the whole sentence and whole, yeah.
It's not going to fit right.
Right.
And so it changes what it's going to make. And that's the idea of a mutation. This would be a nonsense. I mean, it's just going to be, I speak nonsense sometimes. But and so I'll let Mrs. Froman kind of start with the different types of genetic disorders, but these are some specific types, and we'll talk about the symptoms that come from these different disorders there.
Yeah, the first one is called cystic fibrosis. And this is a genetic disease where the body produces thick mucus in the lungs and the intestines, which, if you get all those little tubes in your lungs filled with mucus, it makes it really hard to breathe. And if it's in your intestines, it makes it hard for your food to get digested and into your bloodstream for nutrition.
So it's almost like having a cold or bronchitis like all the time.
All the time, yeah.
Huh. And I've heard this one is just one letter, one 3-letter code out of those 3 billion is mixed up.
Mixed up, and it causes a protein in your lungs to be formed wrong, so it doesn't get the mucus out of your lungs normally, and then just builds up.
So 3 letters out of however many, 3 billion.
Yeah, billions, yeah.
Next is what's called sickle cell anemia. In sickle cell, it's actually, there's a couple different ways this can be passed on. You can actually have the symptoms of it, so it's kind of a codominant trait. So you can have the disease and show symptoms, which means that hemoglobin can't carry as much oxygen, so you're tired because you're breathing heavy because your blood can't carry as much oxygen, so you got to breathe more and more, so you can't carry it in. So you can also be a carrier. It means you can carry the allele, but you're not going to show any symptoms.
Yeah, but if they actually...
So you can also be a carrier, so you can be carrying the disease but not have any symptoms. There's a third type, too, where you could actually have it but not show many symptoms, too, I believe.
Yeah, so since it's codominant, you can have the dominant and the recessive allele, which means that some of your blood cells are going to be sickle-shaped and some of them are normal.
Okay. When you see a picture, I think that's the normal blood cells here.
And then there's that funny-shaped ones. It makes that unable to carry as much oxygen as the round ones.
All right. And the next one, this kind of really ties into what we've been doing in the first section with human inheritance and the idea of color blindness, how it's carried that recessive allele.
Right.
Is hemophilia. And hemophilia is when your blood doesn't clot properly or at all. So one little cut could cause you to bleed to death.
Yeah.
Most time you get cut, you stop bleeding within a few seconds. But this case, you're missing a platelet, that protein in your blood that helps you clot.
Helps that clot, yeah.
And it's caused by a recessive allele on the X chromosome. So remind us again, what does that mean? What does that mean? The X chromosome.
That's going to be a sex-linked.
Okay.
Yeah, the X chromosome is the one that you get from your mother.
Okay.
And your father also carries an X.
And this is the one that, again, I'm more likely to have than you are, right?
Sorry. Yeah.
Because you have the 2 X chromosomes.
Yeah. So if my mother carried this hemophilia, and let's just say my father had hemophilia, and my mother was a carrier. If I got the X, if I'm a female and I get an X from my father and an X from my mother, then I probably am not going to get the hemophilia because I have the second X to kind of
to block it out. You get at least one dominant one on there to block it out.
Right.
Whereas I won't. If I get it from my mother.
If you get it from your mother,
I'm probably going to have it.
You get the Y from your father, so you don't have another X.
So it's one of those, we call them like the sex-linked traits where it's, again, more likely that men are going to have it.
Yeah. And females can get it if you get both X chromosomes with that disease, but we're just better, the females are better protected.
It's the idea of probability that goes back to that. Yeah. So I kind of put this one in now instead of later, is the idea of a karyotype. And we've talked a little bit about it before. But it's a picture just showing all of here's a picture of all 23
Yeah.
pairs of
See,
chromosomes.
There at the bottom, there's that X and Y.
So this would be a boy's karyotype. This would be an XX if it was a girl. And there's a pair. So you have the pair of chromosomes, XY, that's the 23rd. X and Y is technically a pair of chromosomes.
Right.
And the reason we kind of bring this up is our next disease is one that something's gone wrong with how these are kind of divided and created. And that is?
Down syndrome. And that's caused by an extra chromosome number 21. So they have the chromosomes, they each have categories. Or they give them numbers. Because they're all different sizes. And, yeah, see, they're all in order of size. And if you look at number 21 there, we've got 2. If you have 3 of those, you have Down syndrome.
So actually a third one here. Okay.
So you have an extra chromosome.
Okay. I think there's some pretty typical symptoms that come along with it that they show here. All right, so some pretty obvious symptoms that include more of a flattened face. The nose has a certain distinct flavor to it, and even the hands and fingers are more flattened.
Yeah.
Not quite the same.
Very short fingers and toes.
And also, too, they tend to have more heart conditions and some cognitive issues, too.
Yes.
So our next one, I guess, is more of a how we check. How can we check for some of these disorders? And there are ways. One way is an amniocentesis, and it's a procedure. And yes, you actually take a needle, go into that amniotic sac that surrounds the baby, and you can take some of that fluid out, and you can kind of run tests to determine if they may have some of these diseases we've talked about. Or again, there's a lot more than ones we talked about today, also.
Right. There's a lot of things they check for, and this is done, of course, before the baby's born. So that needle goes through the mother's stomach and into the uterus. So they have to use an ultrasound to make sure they don't hit the baby.
Right, and I think this one's called invasive. They don't do this all the time.
No.
This is if they suspect.
Yeah, if you have a history of a lot of problems in your family.
Which brings us right into our next one, which is genetic counselors can be used to determine the chances of having a baby with a genetic disorder. So they're going to go over your family history and maybe make one of those pedigrees for certain traits. They can see if you're carrying it or the chances of a baby having that you would have. So it's kind of another tool. We have a modern day tool to kind of have parents a way to talk about chances of these disorders being passed on.
Right, and if they find out that chance is pretty high, then the parents can decide if they want that amniocentesis to find out if the baby does have it.
Yeah. So 7th grade, we're going to stop there. Just kind of a quick overview of some of the different types of diseases out there that are carried on genes and how it actually happens. So we thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you along the way.
Bye.